In 1967, a group of armed black activists did something that would change America forever. They walked into the California State Capitol building with loaded weapons, and the government's response? Well, let's just say it wasn't what you'd expect, because here's the twist. The politician who signed California's strictest gun control law into existence, the same man who would later become the champion of conservative gun rights advocates, Ronald Reagan. Wait, what? Before we dive into this incredible story that your history teacher probably never told you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're uncovering the hidden chapters of Black history that changed America's laws, shaped modern politics, and continue to impact your life today, whether you know it or not. Trust me, what you're about to discover will completely change how you see the civil rights movement, gun control debates, and even the free breakfast your kids might be eating at school tomorrow morning. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Click that button, hit the notification bell, and join our community of truth seekers who are committed to uncovering the real stories behind Black history. We drop new videos every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's dive in. Oakland, California, October 1966. Two college students, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, are fed up. They're watching their community being terrorized, not by criminals, but by the very people supposed to protect them, the police. Black residents are being beaten, harassed, shot, and killed, and nobody's doing anything about it. The police answer to no one. The government turns a blind eye. The community feels helpless. So, Newton and Seale decide to do something radical. They form the Black Panther Party for self-defense. But here's what most people don't know. The Black Panthers weren't just about revolution and rebellion. They were scholars, legal scholars. Newton and Seale studied California law obsessively. They read every gun statute, every penal code, every constitutional amendment, and they discovered something powerful. Under California law in 1966, it was completely legal to openly carry loaded firearms in public, as long as you didn't point them at anyone. The Second Amendment gave them that right, and they were going to use it. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. in West Oakland. A police officer pulls over a black man. The usual harassment is about to begin, but this time, something's different. A car pulls up. Out step several Black Panthers, armed with shotguns, law books, and cameras. They stand at a legal distance, about 20 feet away, and watch. The police officer is furious. "What do you think you're doing?" And this is where the Panthers' legal knowledge becomes their weapon. "We're exercising our constitutional right to bear arms and observe a police officer in the performance of his duties," they respond. "California Penal Code Section 12031 allows us to carry these weapons as long as they're not concealed and we're not threatening anyone. We're within our legal rights." The officer knows they're right. He can't do anything. The Panthers have turned the tables using the law itself. They called these police patrols or cop watching. They weren't there to start violence. They were there to prevent it, to be witnesses, to protect their community using the very laws that usually protected their oppressors. And it was working. Word spread throughout Oakland. The Panthers grew from a handful of members to dozens, then hundreds. Mothers felt safer. Kids walked to school without fear. The community had protection. But there was a problem. The people in power were terrified. Enter Assemblyman Don Mulford, a conservative Republican from Oakland. Mulford watched the Black Panthers' armed patrols with growing alarm. Yes, what they were doing was legal. Yes, they had the constitutional right to bear arms, but Mulford didn't care about that. What he cared about was that black people were organizing, becoming powerful, and using the law against the system. That had to stop. So, in April 1967, Mulford introduced Assembly Bill 1591, which would later be known as the Mulford Act. The bill would make it illegal to carry loaded firearms in public in California. The bill specifically targeted the Black Panthers. Mulford didn't hide it. In interviews, he openly discussed the Panthers as the reason for the legislation. When Huey Newton and Bobby Seale heard about the bill, they knew they had to make a statement, a big one that would capture the nation's attention and expose exactly what this law was really about. They hatched a plan that was bold, legal, and absolutely unforgettable. May 2, 1967, Sacramento, California. 30 members of the Black Panther Party, led by Bobby Seale, drove up to the California State Capitol building. They were dressed in their iconic uniforms, black leather jackets, black berets, black pants, and they were armed, heavily armed. 357 Magnums, 12-gauge shotguns, 45 caliber pistols, all loaded, all completely legal. As they walked up the Capitol steps, photographers swarmed, camera flashes popped like fireworks. This was unprecedented. Black men carrying loaded weapons, walking into the seat of California's government. Governor Ronald Reagan was actually on the Capitol lawn that day, meeting with a high school group. He was rushed inside by his security detail. The Panthers entered the building. They were there to protest the Mulford Act. On the Capitol steps, Bobby Seale read a powerful statement. The American people in general, and black people in particular, must take careful note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at keeping black people disarmed and powerless, while racist police agencies throughout the state of California intensify the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of black people. The Panthers walked through the halls of the Capitol, fully armed. Legislators panicked. Some locked themselves in their offices. The media captured every moment. Eventually, the Panthers were arrested, not for carrying weapons, which was still legal, but for a technicality. They had failed to unload their weapons before entering the building, violating an obscure fish and game law. But the damage, or rather the message, was sent. The whole country was watching. The reaction was swift and shocking. Conservative Republican Governor Ronald Reagan, who would later become the NRA's hero and champion of gun rights advocates, made a statement that would seem unthinkable today. There's no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. Guns are a ridiculous way to solve problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill. Read that again. Ronald Reagan saying there's no reason for citizens to carry loaded weapons on the street. But here's what's even more stunning. The National Arms Association, the NRA, actually helped write the Mulford Act. They supported it. They wanted it passed. That's right, the NRA supported gun control when it meant disarming black people. The legislative vote tally passed quickly through both the California Assembly and Senate with bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats alike voted for it. On July 28, 1967, Governor Reagan signed it into law. The Black Panthers' Second Amendment rights suddenly illegal in California. And here's the historical irony. This moment, when California passed strict gun control to disarm black activists, is what sparked the modern gun rights movement. Rural white conservatives, watching a law specifically designed to take guns away from black people, began to fear that their guns could be next. Within a decade, the NRA would transform from supporting gun control to becoming the fiercest opponent of any gun regulation whatsoever. The Black Panthers created the modern gun debate without even meaning to. But here's where most documentaries about the Black Panthers end. Armed revolutionaries, government crackdown, end of story. But that's not the real story. That's not even close to their most important legacy. Because when the Mulford Act made armed patrols illegal, the Panthers didn't disappear. They shifted. They shifted their focus from armed self-defense to something even more revolutionary: community survival programs. Over 60 programs, free breakfast for children, free health clinics, free ambulance services, free legal aid, sickle cell anemia testing, liberation schools, community education, free clothing programs, free transportation to prisons so families could visit incarcerated loved ones. These weren't side projects. These were the heart of the Black Panther movement. January 1969, St. Augustine's Church in West Oakland. 11 children sit down for breakfast. On the menu, eggs, grits, toast, fresh oranges, and milk. A simple meal, but for many of these kids, it's the only meal they'll eat that day. By the end of the week, 135 children were showing up for breakfast. By the end of the year, over 20,000 children across 23 cities were being fed by the Black Panthers every morning. The program was run mostly by volunteers, many of them women, both Panthers and community members. They'd start preparing food at 6 a.m. and serve from 7 to 8:30 a.m. Then the children would go to school. The results were immediate and profound. Ruth Beckford, who helped coordinate the program, later recalled what school principals told her.
The children weren't falling asleep in class anymore. They weren't crying with stoush cramps. Their grades improved. Their behavior improved. They could finally learn. By 2019, the Free Breakfast for Children program operated in at least 36 cities nationwide. At its peak, the Panthers were feeding tens of thousands of children every day. In a 1969 U.S. Senate hearing, the National School Lunch Program Administrator had to admit an embarrassing truth. The Black Panther Party was feeding more poor children in California than the state of California itself. Let that sink in. A political organization that the government labeled as dangerous and extremist was doing more to feed hungry children than the government itself. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover hated the Black Panthers, called them the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. But what did he fear most? Not their guns, not their rhetoric, their free breakfast program.
In an internal FBI memo, Hoover wrote that the breakfast program was potentially the greatest threat to efforts by authorities to neutralize the BPP and destroy what it stands for. Why? Because feeding hungry children was winning hearts and minds. Parents loved the Panthers for taking care of their kids. Children grew up seeing the Panthers as heroes. Liberal whites and moderate blacks were supporting the organization. The Panthers were proving that the government had failed its people, and they were doing something about it. So Hoover authorized a campaign to destroy the program. FBI agents went door to door, telling parents that the Panthers would teach their children racism. They spread rumors that the food was poisoned, infected with venereal disease. They raided breakfast sites with armed officers, traumatizing terrified children. They photographed children who attended the programs to intimidate families. They sent forged letters to grocery stores and businesses, discouraging them from donating food. They pressured churches to stop hosting the programs. The U.S. government used its full power to stop children from getting free breakfast. Think about that for a moment. Act 9. The Lasting Impact: How the Panthers Changed American Law. Here's what they don't teach you in school. If you or your children have ever received a free breakfast or free lunch in a public school, you have the Black Panthers to thank. The massive success of the Panthers breakfast program embarrassed the federal government into action. In 1973, Congress dramatically increased funding for the National School Lunch Program. In 1975, they authorized the expansion of the school breakfast program to all public schools. Today, millions of children across America receive free meals at school because the Black Panthers proved it was necessary, possible, and essential. But that's not the only law they changed. The Mulford Act that Reagan signed in 1967, it became the foundation for California's strict gun control laws, some of the toughest in the nation. It set a precedent that states could regulate open carry, which influenced gun legislation nationwide. Ironically, just last month, January 2026, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down California's open carry ban, citing the Second Amendment. The legal battle that began with the Black Panthers in 1967 is still being fought today. The Panther survival programs inspired generations of community organizing. Food banks, community health clinics, after-school programs, legal aid services. The template created by the Black Panthers lives on in communities across America. They also exposed government corruption. The FBI's COINTELPRO operations against the Panthers, including surveillance, infiltration, and assassination, eventually were revealed and led to investigations that changed how federal law enforcement operates. Act 10. The Lessons We Forgot. So why don't we learn this in school? Why is the narrative about the Black Panthers always focused on their guns, their anger, their militancy, and never on the fact that they fed hungry children, provided free health care, and forced America to take care of its most vulnerable citizens? Because the true lesson of the Black Panthers is dangerous to power. When communities organize, study the law, take care of each other, and demand their rights, they can change the system. The Panthers understood something crucial. Revolution isn't just about tearing down, it's about building up. It's about feeding children, healing the sick, educating the community, and creating the world you want to see. They called it survival pending revolution. Meet people's basic needs while fighting for systemic change. Today, in the richest country in the history of the world, 1 in 5 children faces food insecurity. Millions lack access to health care. Communities of color still face police violence and systemic neglect. The same problems the Panthers fought against 60 years ago still exist. But the same solutions still work. Community organizing, mutual aid, taking care of each other, using knowledge of the law as a weapon, demanding that government serves the people, not power. The Black Panthers taught us that you don't need permission to feed hungry children. You don't need permission to heal your community. You don't need permission to educate and organize. You just need courage, commitment, and a community willing to fight for each other. In 1967, the Black Panthers walked into the California state capitol with loaded weapons to protest a racist law. The government responded by taking away their guns. So the Panthers responded by feeding 20,000 children. They changed California's gun laws. They changed America's school lunch programs. They changed how communities organize for survival. They changed the FBI. They changed the entire debate about guns in America. And most importantly, they proved that real revolution happens in the community, one breakfast at a time, one health screening at a time, one educated child at a time. The next time someone tells you about the Black Panthers, don't let them stop at the leather jackets and the guns. Tell them about the breakfast programs. Tell them about the health clinics. Tell them about the children who could finally learn because they weren't hungry. Tell them about the laws that were changed. Tell them the full story, because that's the Black history they tried to hide, and that's the legacy that changed America forever. Before you go, let me ask you something. Did this story change the way you see Black history? Did it open your eyes to something your teachers never told you? If the answer is yes, then do me a favor right now. Subscribe to this channel. Seriously, stop what you're doing and hit that subscribe button. Click the notification bell so you never miss a video. We're on a mission to uncover the hidden chapters of Black history that changed America, and we need you in this community. And drop a comment below right now. Tell us, what other hidden Black history topics do you want us to cover?